if you have no idea what you want, what you need, what you feel, if you feel like you're constantly attracting very shallow, I want to say, emotionally unavailable partners, and you feel like a little bit lost in relationships, confused, patterns repeating, this conversation was so dang good. I think you're going to love it. You're going to gain so much from it. And yeah, I don't think I have anything further to say, but like, listen up and take notes because this is good, good stuff. Hello, Valerie. I'm so happy to see you here after we had a conversation on your podcast. And I think my first question is, how did you get into this work?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And thank you so much for having me on. So, two different ways that I kind of got into this work. So, I'll start with the professional way that I got into this work. So, I started as a hypnotherapist and I worked with clients who had chronic anxiety, CPTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, all these clinical terms, right? And I found a really common pattern of the clients who weren't getting better over time. It was A, clients who were in trauma bonded or toxic relationships, or B, people who had like anxious attachment style, which really correlates also with people who are in trauma bonds. And so it's like when we actually started to work on their attachment system, it was like, oh, this is why you aren't getting better, like anxiety wise. Like, this is really the undercurrent. Like, your relationships are not separate from your mental wellness and mental well being. So, that's like the professional side. And then the personal side, I got into a trauma bonded relationship with a covert narcissist. And at that point, I was doing a lot of work. I was in talk therapy for 5 years. I was even doing hypnotherapy. I was doing all the things. And the anxiety that I was experiencing started to become managed. But before then, so before the anxiety, before I got into this relationship with this guy, I had chronic debilitating anxiety to where it started to show up as physical symptoms. And it would show up as chronic headaches, chronic neck pain, IBS, cystic acne. Like, it felt like I was in my early 20s living in a 90-year-old's body. And they would do all these tests, all these doctors. I would spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars in supplements, chiropractic care, all the things. And nothing was actually moving the needle forward until I started to do somatic therapy. And so once I started to do somatic therapy, that's when things really started to click for me. And I was like, oh, like, my nervous system was so dysregulated, it was causing these physical symptoms in my body. So then, fast forward, I reduced a lot of the chronic pain, the anxiety within 6 months of incorporating somatic therapy. And then I thought, oh, I'm healed, I'm great, my body pain is gone, my whole new lease on life. And then I got into this relationship with this guy who was a covert narcissist. And, really what ended up happening was, he broke up with me. I was devastated. It was just like ups and downs and ups and downs. And it was so incredibly destabilizing. And then once we broke up, I learned much more about nervous system regulation. I learned about, really our attraction and our more about our neuroception. Like, if your body and your nervous system is wired and you have been raised by emotionally unavailable caregivers, you're going to replicate that in adulthood until you do the work in the body, the subconscious mind, the somatic work, so that you can learn a new baseline. So that's really how I got into somatic therapy and how I got into anxious attachment, and really how I got into my work as an anxious attachment specialist today.
Thank you
That's
for
a really
sharing
long
that. No, that was too short. I have more questions.
Yeah.
What in your life can you attribute? I know it's probably not like one thing
Yeah.
that sort of like led you into this toxic relationship, and Was this like a pattern? Like, did you have
Oh,
many of those?
mm.
Okay.
So I feel like up until him, my relationships were more with people who were like emotionally unavailable, or in clinical terms, you would call them avoidantly attached. That would be like my template of men. But then this was like so catastrophic and much more damaging being in this type of relationship with that type of covert narcissist. So that's what my relationships were like. And then a little bit just about my background. And I shared a little bit about this on my podcast when Marina was on my podcast. For me, it was like I had a narcissistic father, an emotionally inconsistent and unavailable mother. And then I have two brothers, and one of them has autism and very like high level of care and need. So right now he's 28, but cognitively he's like 4 years old. So I was very parentified. I learned like my needs don't matter. I can't take up space. A lot of learning that love is not stable. My mom was very caring, but she was also very enmeshed and codependent. So if I had an emotion, she would just take it on as her own. And like if I was crying, she would start crying, or she would just try and fix it. And then my dad was just completely unavailable emotionally. So, and then it's like combined with the chaos in my family, it's like, of course, I never learned how to self soothe. So for me, I always had to be in a relationship with a partner, like, always had to be in one. It was like uncomfortable and just unheard of for me not to be in a relationship. And so, yeah, even just now, like, a few days ago marked 2 years of being completely single. And so it's just like, these things just really made me the perfect prime for these types of relationships.
So, what you just shared, it makes so much sense, and I resonate with it so much, and I'm so glad you shared it because I know, like, so many people are gonna, resonate. And you said something to me before we started recording that I think is so huge, which is about vulnerability, because I think, like, as an expert in anxious attachment, I don't know if it's just me, but I always think, like, people who are anxiously attached, they feel, like, very intensely. So it would make sense that they would be vulnerable. But what you shared is like the lack of vulnerability. So can you like talk about that? Because I think it's very clear when you're avoidant, when you're emotionally unavailable, you're not going to be vulnerable, right? But then
Yeah.
are you also not vulnerable when you're anxiously attached?
A lot of the time, you're really not vulnerable when you're anxiously attached. And let me explain this in this way. And a lot of my clients tell me, oh, I've been attracting these avoidant partners over and over again. And the thing is, the big key difference here is with anxiously attached people, they're hyper attuned, hyper available to other and to their partners, and emotionally unavailable to themselves because A, they never learned how to self soothe, and B, they just, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. They never learned how to self soothe. Oh, yeah. And then B, they have so many limiting beliefs around it. Like, I'm too much. My emotions are too much. Because with anxiously attached folks, what happens is they're not being with the emotion, they're being flooded by it. So they learn to disconnect from their emotions, avoid it, be hyper aware of everyone else's, become hyper vigilant, do all these things and overgive so that we don't have to look at what is internal and what's happening inside. And so that fear of vulnerability, it stops us from actually sharing our emotions, sharing our inner world, and then we become a magnet for narcissistic partners or avoidant partners because you're not sharing your needs, you're not sharing your boundaries. And it's even funny because, like, a personal example, like, I used to always point the finger years ago, always point, oh my God, he's so avoidant. And then now I live with an amazing roommate and my best friend who's also a therapist. So we're also very open about these things. And it was almost like switched when we started living together. Like, she was like, I feel like you're not opening up about your boundaries or your needs or your emotions. Like you're always hiding something or not fully being vulnerable. Like, I just want to connect with you. And so everyone wants to point the finger when I was the common denominator in all of my relationships. And it's like when I started to work on that fear of vulnerability, I started to naturally share my needs, share my boundaries, share how I was feeling. And that allows you to feel more connected to people around you. It's not even just in romantic relationships, it's in friendships, it's in if you run a business, you can share more on social media. Like, so many things can blossom from there. And it's ultimately like you showing your inner child, I am here with you. None of your emotions are too much. Because when we're living from our true adult self, no emotion is too much. When we're blended and merged with a young part, that's when it feels too much.
Wow, that was so freaking good. I love your distinction about, yeah, like avoidant people kind of numb out the emotion, but anxious people are so overtaken by it. That's not real vulnerability. Can you define and describe what is vulnerability? Like, how do you see it?
I see vulnerability in this way. You can share your emotions, you can share your fears, you can share your needs, you can share your innermost things that you might not share with everyone. It's also like intimacy is into you, I see. So a lot of um, clients or, even past partners, like, wouldn't really look at me in the eye, or it would feel very uncomfortable for them to make deep eye contact. It's like those are some ways that subtle ways we can pull away. And it's like not wanting to have those type of deep conversations or self-isolating. That's a big one. But it's really just sharing all parts of you without the masks, without the I'm fine mask, without the I don't need anyone mask.
Yeah, beautiful. And can you walk us through your journey? Like, you're saying that you've been single for 2 years. A lot of my clients are like, they can't fathom being single or not putting all their focus on something external. So I think that a lot of like anxious attachment is also focusing on a goal, a career thing, like anything outside of self, right? How have you personally like transformed that? Or continue to every day, I'm sure.
Yeah, I love this question. So I think for me, it was like not even like I had to. But at first it was like my last breakup, it was clear that they were more avoidant leaning. And I was like, I want to heal a lot of this. Like, this is a reoccurring pattern. And it was just like, I don't want to rush into something else. And then once I started to put the focus back on myself, like, what is contributing to this pattern? And also finding things in my life that fulfill me internally, right? Like coloring, dancing. I used to be on 2 dance teams, traveling. I've been a digital nomad for 6 months now. Like, all things that bring me true fulfillment and joy. But also, when you start to feel safer in your body and can sit with emotions, that's when it will feel safer to be more in your internal experience, not focused as much outward. But we can't do that unless we are in our true adult self. And going back to what you said, that was also me. I used to not even be able to fathom being single for that long, or I would feel shame around it. And it's just knowing that I have my own things that I want to blossom, and I have my own life, and like, I am already safe and taken care of internally through this work every single day, tending to those parts, that a partner is just extra. They're just a bonus. It's beautiful. And even I'll just share something vulnerable. Obviously, I have been single for 2 years, and there were definitely protector parts and walls around my heart that felt it wasn't fully ready to open up to a partner, or just resistance to even thinking about being in a relationship. And I know some people listening to this might resonate with that. And so I did this brain spotting session, and it was like focusing on the resistance and then focusing on a different spot of healthy love, what that would actually look like. And it was such a visceral experience where I felt goosebumps all throughout my body, all throughout my heart. It felt like I was living in that reality now with a romantic partner. And it's like when you have such a visceral, raw, real, vulnerable experience internally, then I don't need to chase it externally. Like whether or not that comes into my life, I am okay. And years ago, oh my God, I hated people who used to say shit like that. Because I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I need them to feel okay. I need a partner to fulfill me. I need them to complete me. And it's like once I started to rewire that and start to show my body that there is love and safety here now and I can create it within, I don't need to grip it or chase it externally. And so then being single is much more like, it's just like, okay, if they come in or not, that's okay.
Beautiful. What would you say to a person who is really gripping that, like really struggling to, like really anxious, really struggling to enjoy life, really focused on all these external things, have a really severe like fear of abandonment. Every little rejection just sets them off. What are the practices that can help them shift it?
Mm. So one that I learned that has been monumental for me this year, I was taught this by Emily Colligan. It's something called adult self-anchoring. So if you're anxiously attached and you're gripping, you are in a young part. You are not in your true adult self. People who are anxiously attached or have an insecure attachment style, what ends up happening is they don't have a true adult self present, meaning they don't feel secure, they don't feel calm in their body. So when you can even start to bring up a memory that makes you feel calm, proud, or capable of yourself, then you are reactivating that pathway of like, hey, I have been my safe place before and I can anchor into that. And it's like, okay, and I invite clients into this as well. Okay, when we think about this memory, where do you feel that capability or feeling of proud as sensations in your body? Where do you feel that? Usually they'll say, I feel it in my, open heart. I can feel my shoulders relax. I can feel myself take a deeper breath. Amazing. And then we want to match our physiology to that. Meaning, okay, well, I'm in my true adult self. My spine is straight. Because when we're in shame or in a young part, we are collapsed. We feel small. We feel like we need to hide. So by opening up with our spine, opening up our chest, having our shoulders be relaxed, we are now in our adult self. Physiologically, our body is matching that internal state. So when we practice that enough times, now that's our new neural pathways are beginning to shift and form in real life. And when I started to consistently practice that every day, I started to become less merged and flooded by my emotions. I would have more space because when we're chasing and gripping, we have no space from the young part. We think we are the young part and we need something outside of us because when we were a baby, being alone meant danger. Separation meant danger. So when we can anchor into that adult self, okay, I know there's someone steady here, there's someone holding me, and I'm practicing that every day, you become less flooded, less merged, and you just feel more secure in your body. So that's one way to do it. One really powerful practice this year. Another one is vagus toning exercises. So when we are attracted to emotionally unavailable partners or we're anxiously attached and we're hypervigilant all the time, when we have that nervous system that's primed for that instability and the ups and downs and the craziness, that becomes our new normal. So when we do vagus toning, it's rewiring the nervous system to learn that I can create that safety within me, and it builds a new baseline. of safety. You're starting to practice that safety every day. It turns on those safety signals because when we have been exposed to chronic stress or trauma and we're anxiously attached, our vagus nerve stops functioning as efficiently. So then we get stuck on. So that's why vagus toning is so incredibly powerful. So those are really my top two. If you have just two tools, adult self-anchoring and vagus toning, that's really going to be so powerful in helping you.
And what are some vagus toning exercises that you love?
Yeah, so starting out, even just using an ice pack, especially if we're at a 10 out of 10 on anxiety or we're at a 7 plus, ooh, trying to meditate or journal, your body thinks it's going to be eaten by a tiger, honey. We don't want to be doing that. Our body isn't primed for that. So even just putting that ice pack on the sides of your neck, on, your cheeks, even on the back of your neck, it's stimulating your vagus nerve and it helps to bring you back down even 1% more. And it helps you to just like take deeper breaths. It shocks your brain and nervous system from the cold. So that's one. Humming breath. So when we're doing that, we're stimulating that vagus nerve with the voice. Physiological sighs. Those are really good one. So those are some really, really wonderful ones that I use every day.
I love those too. I love humming. And for you guys, if you don't know what physiological sighs, you can YouTube it, but it's basically 2 inhales through the nose and then an exhale, and it's great. Can you describe some of your maybe recent or a while ago, like 10 out of 10 kind of like triggers around this?
Yeah.
And how you moved through them? Like, did you do something in the moment? Did you do something way later? What was the sequence of it?
Yeah, so I can use this morning. So
Perfect.
yeah, starting out like yesterday, I had a really expansive moment when I was talking about doing that brain spotting meditation. That was just yesterday. I felt all that love. And so when that happened, all my protector parts softened and I felt my heart open. And if you don't know this, our nervous system doesn't just like, oh, I'm going to have an expansive experience and then I'm just going to stay open.
Forever.
Beautiful, beautiful, and just stay there forever.
Perfect.
Yeah. What ends up happening is the nervous system goes, oh, I expanded. Now I'm going to contract back because those protector parts are scanning. Am I safe? Is this okay where we're at? Like, what the F is happening? And then for me, I just felt this intense abandonment anxiety when I woke up. And really, that was what was protecting me from opening up my heart, was feeling that abandonment anxiety again. So what I started to do is I started with vagus toning exercises, literally the ones I just described. And then I went into adult self-anchoring. So those practices that I mentioned. And then I also went into an unblending practice where I created space to be, to see that young part outside of me. And it was just a really small 3-year-old who was literally gripping and scared that my mother was going to leave me. Okay, so it's like when we can have that separated space, that's what really helped me to be like, oh, I'm really in a young part here. This is not my true adult self. And then I went into some EFT tapping, some more breath work, and it was literally at a 10 out of 10. And then by the end of that, it was a 2 out of 10 because it's working with the body. It's not thinking our way through it.
I love that so much. And thank you for your vulnerability right here and sharing that. I fully relate to these moments. And also, letting people know that, like, this is normal. This is how our nervous system works, up and down.
Yes. And people think, and this is what I used to think, is like, I'm going to do this work and everything's going to be perfectly stable. But no, it's like, as you continue doing the work, like, the wound might, like, you're going deeper into the wound. And when you feel more safe in your body, more of those experiences that you have spent your whole life running away from will come back because that young part is looking for resolution.
So true. And when we have more safety and capacity, that young part can be here, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I really relate to your family dynamic, although I'm an only child. So mostly. And can you share a bit about why? Like, what happens with our needs, desires, and emotions when we have a codependent parent and when we have a narcissistic parent? Even if we don't need to diagnose here, but even if a parent who's like on that spectrum closer to narcissism, right?
Mm. We learn that our needs will not get met, at least consistently. So now I have to perform, I have to be perfect, I have to be as small as possible. And for me, that looked like not sharing my needs, being perfect. I was a big, big hyperachiever. I always had to have perfect grades. I would study myself into the ground. In college when everyone else was partying and going crazy, I was studying like 60 hours a week.
Oh
So,
my God, are we like
yeah.
parallel lives? I don't. Candy. I read every single book on the reading list.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like it was wild, and it's like I learned I had to be small because my needs inconvenience, burden other people, or they were shamed completely from my narcissistic father. And it's like when we're in these types of dynamics, they can't be disappointed. Like our narcissistic parent can't be disappointed. They have no emotional regulation skills whatsoever. And then when you have an enmeshed parent, they also have no emotional regulation. So you're essentially, there's no self-soothing going on. So of course you have to adapt yourself, or even what I see a lot with people and myself, it's like you have to be your parent's therapist. You have to be the peacemaker. I was the one who always was the strong one. I had to keep it all together so that nothing else would crash down. And then that makes you extremely hyper vigilant. Like, when's the next shoe gonna drop?
Oh man, do I relate so deeply. And they, when they can't, it's such an immaturity when they cannot handle disappointment. Then it's like, well, I can't disappoint them. So I'm monitoring. Yeah. And so that piece about needs and desires, so many people I know listening to this podcast have no idea what their needs and desires are,
Mm-hmm.
let alone expressing them, but they don't even know what
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
So how would you work with that with them?
Yeah. And just to honor that, that is so normal if you've experienced a dynamic that Marina or I have. So I start with making really small ways to make contact with your body. If we're starting with desires or needs, okay, it's like I have clients start out with, I want you to find two objects in your room. One object that feels like a yes, I want to pick it up, and one that's a no. Okay. So for me, it's like a yes to me and my body feels like this microphone. I feel expansive in my body. I'm speaking into it. I need it to speak so that Marina can hear me well. And then I see my lamp right on my desk here. And that makes my body feel a little bit anxious, a little bit constrictive. I'm like, I don't want to move the lamp. It's positioned perfectly. I don't want to break it. So it's like, okay, what are you noticing in your body that told you this is my yes object, this is my no object?
Mm.
And it's like you can also practice this with friends or a partner if they're like, what do you want for dinner tonight? Italian or Mexican? What feels alive in my body? What feels more exciting to you when you think about that Italian food, etc.? So it's like these are small ways that we can start to build that muscle in our body.
I love that because change always happens in small ways. Those are so brilliant. Um, when it comes to unavailable partners,
Mm-hmm.
how can somebody know? Might not be from the very first date, but what are like some signs that they can recognize this person's unavailable?
Mm. Okay, two things that really pop up. And this, when I was dating a lot more last year and going on a lot more dates, usually people would out themselves first when they knew what I did for a living. Usually I would ask them certain things like, what are your thoughts on therapy? And If someone says, "I've never needed it," that's typically a sign they're emotionally unavailable. Because even if you, quote unquote, had a great childhood, there's always something in your life that might be stressful, job loss, career changes, friendship dynamics change, a breakup. All of these things are normal things that happen, and they can be very stressful, and sometimes we need that extra added support. So anytime someone would say, "I've never needed it," instant no. Instant no. And people usually tell on themselves. Or, well, I date men, so a lot of men have a lot of programming around emotions. If people tell you emotions are weak, I don't cry, I don't know the last time I've cried, those are big indicators. I would also say, if some other indicators, it's like, are they consistent over time? Emotionally unavailable people, they can wear a quote unquote secure mask at first, but after a 3 to 6 month mark is typically when their mask completely falls or they become hot and cold. That's one way. It's like one day they're all about you, showing you all kinds of love and affection. The next day they're completely ignoring you or forgetting about you. So these are just some common little subtle ways that people can show you that they're unavailable. Or if you can almost sense that they are uncomfortable with your emotions, that used to be like myself um, a while ago, right? So these are all just really common things. Or they never get very deep in conversation with you.
This is so good. I love it. And then when it comes to us, if we're afraid of vulnerability, like what? Yeah, I don't even know how to phrase the question exactly, but like how
Yeah.
can we kind of show up vulnerably? Because on the first date, we don't want to reveal all, right? It's like
Yes.
a build up. And like also how do we know that somebody's a safe person to really do that with?
Mm. It's really over time, witnessing, are their actions and words matching over time? Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they consistent? Especially if you're dating or you go out to a restaurant, especially early dating, like how are they treating service staff? That is huge. Those are some telltale signs. Um, yeah, other ways that you can know that they're a safe person is they're reliable when, yeah, that goes back to actions and words matching up. Um, consistent. It's not up and down. It's very steady, it's stable. It doesn't mean that there's no conflict, but it means that you can also set boundaries with them. You can repair with them. They can own up to accountability. Like, yeah, I really did hurt you. And I can see how, what I said hurt your feelings. I'm so sorry about that. I'd love to do this moving forward. Um, yeah, those are some small examples, some ways that someone's a safe person.
Beautiful. And then how do we open up? Like how do we show up vulnerably?
Mm. So obviously not like on the first date, but it could be like small ways on a first date. Like, hey, this is my first date in a while. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to dive into this date with you. And even like with friends, you can start practicing. Because for me, the fear of vulnerability would show up when I would have a big emotion or a lot of grief. A part of me would want to hide that away. Or if I was anxious, I wouldn't want to share it. So those are some ways that you can notice, hey, I'm not being vulnerable. So it's like, hey, I'm nervous a little bit on this date. Other small ways, just like sharing, with work, if work has been stressful, maybe share a little bit about that, how that's been stressing you out this week. Small things that you can do and really see, how are they responding to your emotions? Are they validating your stress? Are they validating the anxiety that you're experiencing? Or are they dismissing it?
These are so good, Val. I'm taking notes, mental notes. Um, I think my last sort of question would be around being too much because you mentioned that, and I totally relate, and I think a lot of listeners relate. There's so much out there about self worth,
Mhm.
which is great. I don't always necessarily relate to that. I relate more like I feel worthy inside, but I feel like other people feel like I'm too much, right? Like it's not about me. I don't see myself as a problem. It's just what other people how they view me. And so I'm wondering how you've worked on that. How do you work with that with clients like when they feel like they're too much?
Yeah, it's to first start with this basic level foundation of understanding of I don't really believe in too much, and let me explain why. And if you think about a child in the desert and they're starving for food, they don't give a fuck what diet you're on. They're going to eat anything that you put in front of them because they're starving or they're dying of thirst. They're going to get whatever water you give them. They're not going to check if it's osmosis water or from a filter, right? And it's like when we can notice, hey, I feel too much, that's coming from a young part. But it's like we're going to I just don't believe in too needy or too clingy or too much. It's like, of course, when we've been starved of that our whole life, we're going to have like behaviors that show that. And then we're also blended with a young part if we feel we're too much because our adult selves can handle all the big emotions that we have. And healthy people will be able to acknowledge your emotions without taking them on, and they're not going to believe that your emotions are too much. And even like my best friend and roommate has really helped me with that. And when I've been grieving or sad or anxious or upset, she's like, you don't have to put on a mask with me. Like, it's okay that you're grieving. That is really sad. That's really upsetting. And that's what healthy, safe people should do for you as well. And that helps to really rewire this narrative that you are too much. But when you are very anxiously attached and we're merged with young parts, we can show up with protest behaviors if like our abandonment wound is triggered of like calling our partner 10 times if we're in a conflict and maybe we haven't put a bow on it perfectly and repaired everything. It's like that's one way that we're protesting, and that can look like too much to someone else. But when we can learn how to anchor into our adult body and unblend from those young parts, that's when outwardly it's going to look differently and internally it's going to feel different. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love what you said, and I totally agree that practicing doesn't have to be with a partner, with a friend. And I have the same experience. Practicing with a friend doesn't mean that my friend is perfect or I'm perfect, right? But just the feeling of safety and vulnerability that we have each other's back, that is so rewiring of that. And I totally also agree that like any of our emotions or needs are not too much. And I think when we say to ourselves, "Oh, I feel guilty for having this need," that's when the protest behaviors begin, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like practicing in small ways. Small ways with sharing a need. It's first even connecting with your body to see like what do I need, right? And it's starting to go into practicing those in small ways. Like, hey, let me use a good example. Like downstairs we have like delivery service or whatever, and they don't bring it up like to our actual room. So if I'm going through something or now we like switch off, it's like, hey, can you go downstairs and get the water that's been delivered, right? Those are really small ways of doing.
I remember feeling guilty for asking for a glass of water from a friend, you know? Yeah, so just starting right there.
Yeah, and know that like it's so normal that the guilt is going to come up when it's just something that's unfamiliar to speak our needs out loud when you've had
Yeah.
similar dynamics to Marina or myself. So also like welcoming that guilt and just witnessing that guilt and even pendulating with it. Like, can I notice the safety and groundedness of how grounded my feet feel on the floor while also feeling this guilt in my chest and even switching back and forth?
Beautiful. Is there anything that you want to add that you feel like we haven't covered?
No, I think these are like really fabulous questions. Nothing else is like really pinging in my mind right now.
Okay, cool. I love it. I mean, I just think it's been such a brilliant conversation, and you're so brilliant. And how can people, find you and work with you?
Yeah, so Instagram, you can find me at Heal with Val on Instagram. Also my podcast, which Marina was on, and we talked even deeper about the fear of receiving, and that was such a juicy episode. So I'd love for you to tune into that and my podcast called the Anxiety Recovery Podcast. So those are two ways. And then if you want to start to practice some of the things that I mentioned, I have a free masterclass called Breaking Your Attraction to Emotionally Unavailable Partners. It includes brain spotting, it includes adult self anchoring, and like really shifting into that. And that's really, really going to be very helpful for you if you're stuck in this loop.
I love that. We're gonna link all those things. Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation.